Dmitry Mendeleev was born in Tobolsk, Russia, in the ripe year of 1834. He had an ambiguous amount of siblings. Multiple sources suggest around 14 children, many of them suggest upwards to 17. Anyways, if you grow up in a household with more than 5 other kids, you normally don't have a whole lot to yourself, personally and financially, let alone 17 of them. His father was a professor at St. Petersburg University and later went blind and then even later died when young Mendeleev was only 13 years old, causing his mother to reopen a glass factory in order to support all 17 or so of her kids, which burned down maybe 2 years later. At this point, Dmitry, his sister, and mother were the only ones left after all the other siblings either died of tuberculosis or moved out. So after his father's death in the glass factory fiasco, they moved to Moscow to live with Dmitry's uncle. But when he learned that his nephew was some weirdo scientist wannabe, he refused to help him seek a higher education. Even though they would not be living in Moscow, they continued their pilgrimage to Moscow University, on horse, for what many people guesstimate to be about a good 100 miles or so over the Ural Mountains. Then because of certain political discourse in Moscow, he was rejected from the university. So after getting rejected by his dream university and uncle, Dmitry and co set off to St. Petersburg to have his dead father live through him vicariously as he then gets accepted to St. Petersburg University, like father like son. He then gets his sciencey education and goes on to be one of the biggest contributors to the world of chemistry. Alright, so English chemist John Newlands did a little bit of research and trial and error in order to find out when you organize elements by their atomic mass, they get put into rows with other elements that have similar characteristics. Doing this, he discovered the consistency between alkali metals and salt formers. This was called the octave law because it was done by rows of 7. It was kind of like music and stuff because you have octaves and notes and, well, whatever. He created one of the first and more crude representations of what we now have as a periodic table. Okay, but enough of Newlands. He's not the star of the show. Mendeleev built his theory 5 years later and fixed 2 of his errors. 1, music is a science, but science isn't really music. I mean, it kinda depends. And 2, he factored when organizing the periodic table of elements that since new elements were being discovered faster than tuberculosis was becoming a century-wide epidemic, Mendeleev took both of those in mind, and he made periodic gaps. And with all this knowledge, he realized that the elements not yet discovered would, and of course, be discovered, and he was able to correctly predict their physical and chemical properties based on this table. So out of the only 63 elements that Mendeleev was working with at the time, the model of the periodic table is what held the basis for the modern-day table that we use today, that organized over 118 elements that we know of. After this achievement, he continued studying and teaching apart from his crippling illnesses. He became professor of chemistry at his institute and continued to teach at school as well as anywhere he went. Spreading knowledge was important to him, even being quoted at,
"For me it was a revelation, a beautiful improvisation, a stimulant to the intellect which left deep traces on my development.